Before we begin, this episode contains detailed accounts of violent crime, including the murders of minors. The victims in this story were real people with real lives, real families, and real futures that were taken from them. Their names are spoken here with respect. The forgotten deserve to be remembered. April 19th, 1983. Police arrive at a rundown blue house in the Charleston section of Staten Island with shovels and a backhoe. They start digging up an old woman's backyard. Her neighbors watch from their windows, and the old woman stands in her yard and watches too. And about 3 feet down, in a shallow grave that her son dug in a hurry, they find a body of a girl. And then, in the same hole, underneath the first girl, a second body. 2 teenage girls from the Jersey Shore, shot in the head, dismembered, wrapped up and driven across state lines and put in the ground, in the backyard of a house where an old woman hung her laundry and tended her garden and lived her quiet life. The first girl's name was Maria Chialella. She was 17 years old, a senior at Brick Memorial High School who loved art and wanted to study music. On Halloween night 1981, she walked out telling her father she'd be home by midnight. A police officer spotted her just after midnight walking along Route 88 toward home. He was on a call. He told himself he had looped back, but Maria was gone when he came back, and nobody knew where she was for 16 months. The second girl was Deborah Osborne, also 17. She went to a bar in Point Pleasant one April night in 1982 with a friend. Her friend got up at some point to use the restroom, but when she came back, Deborah was gone, and that was the last time anyone saw her, until she came out of the same grave as Maria, but in 3 pieces. Maria and Deborah weren't the only ones. For months before that backhoe touched Staten Island soil, children playing behind a Burger King in Ocean Township found a third girl in the leaves, shot in the head, fully clothed, 5 months in the ground. Her name was Anna Olesiewicz. She was 18 years old, and she was the reason police knew where to dig. And the whole time, while those families were out there searching, somebody in a New Jersey state office had a file with the killer's name on it, sitting there for 25 years. Before any of that, before the file, before the backhoe, before the names, there was just a shore. Asbury Park in the early 1980s was a town that had seen better decades, but hadn't given up on itself yet. The boardwalk still ran the length of the beach, weathered wood, salt air, the particular smell of funnel cake, and ocean that hits you before you even park the car. The stone pony sat on the corner of Ocean and 2nd Avenue. And on a good night, the music came through the walls loud enough to hear from across the street. Teenagers drove down from Camden, from Brick Township, from Toms River, from every shore-adjacent town in Monmouth and Ocean Count. Why? Because the shore in summer was what it had always been, the place you went when you needed to feel like the world was larger than your neighborhood. Point Pleasant was 20 minutes south, quieter, smaller, the kind of town where everybody recognized everybody's car. Route 88 ran through it toward the beach and on. A Halloween night with the temperature dropping and jack-o'-lanterns on every porch. It was the kind of road you could walk home on without thinking twice. People did it all the time. This was the world these girls moved through. Not dangerous, not unusual, just the shore. Loud and warm and salt-smelling and ordinary. The way it had been for every summer anyone could remember. That's what made it so easy for something to move through it unnoticed. In the same parking lots where they left their cars, a man with a .22 caliber handgun and a preference for dark-haired young women was already driving. Nobody knew his name yet. The shore didn't know to be afraid of him specifically. It just kept being the shore while he moved through it looking for someone to kill. There was a ring. A black and gold ring that Michael Knobloch gave Anna Olesiewicz on June 5, 1980, the 8th anniversary of her mother's death. because she had been down and he wanted to give her something that helped. They had been neighbors first in South Camden, then classmates, then together for 3 years before Anna ended it in June 1982 without giving him a reason. He spent a long time trying to figure out what it was. He believed they would get back together. She was still wearing his ring even after separating. She wore it every day after that. A black and gold ring, small and specific, the kind of thing you give someone when words aren't enough. She was wearing it the night she left for the shore. On August 27th, 1982, Anna had just graduated from Paul VI High School in Haddon Township. Classes at Camden County Community College were starting Monday. She had 1 weekend left of summer, and she wanted to spend it at the Jersey Shore. She went there with her friend, Denise Hunter. They drove to Neptune City, where Denise's uncle lived, and from there they walked to the Asbury Park Boardwalk. It was a warm night. The Stone Pony had music coming through its walls. Anna and Denise sat across from the club and listened. Anna's feet hurt. She gave her shoes to Denise, who put them in her pocketbook. Denise needed to use the restroom. Rather than use a public one, she decided to walk to her uncle's house. She told Anna she'd be back. She was gone 15 minutes. When Denise came back, the spot where Anna had been sitting was empty. She searched the boardwalk. She called out. She looked for hours into the early morning, and then she went to the police. When Anna didn't come home that Sunday, her brother Robert knew. He said immediately that she wasn't the type to go off without letting anyone know. Something must have happened to her. Robert Olesiewicz drove to Asbury Park the following weekend with Anna's photograph. He walked the boardwalk showing it to strangers. He came back the weekend after that, and the weekend after that. He kept coming back, kept asking if anyone had seen his sister. Nobody had. The black and gold ring was still on her finger. It would stay there until the night she died, and then it wouldn't. 9 months before that, another family in Brick Township had already started their own search. They didn't know about Anna. Anna's family didn't know about them. The thing that connected them was still out there driving Route 88 in the dark. Maria Teresa Chialella was born on September 27, 1964, to Armando and Mary Chialella in Brick Township, New Jersey. The family was close and religious, members of St. Dominic's Roman Catholic Church, the kind of family that showed up for each other and showed up for the community. By 1981, she was a senior at Brick Memorial High School. Her favorite subjects were art and English. She wanted to study music at South Carolina College after she graduated. That summer she had worked at a motel on the beach. She loved the shore, the particular quality of light on the water in the morning, the way of summer. A job by the ocean feels like freedom even when it's work. On Halloween night, 1981, Maria asked her mother for $1 before she left. Her mother only had a 10 and told her to ask her father. Her father gave her the $1. He told her to be back early. She pulled on a white fur jacket over a denim vest and walked out the door into an October evening that smelled like dried leaves and cold salt air coming off the shore. She told her father she'd be home by midnight, and around 12:20 in the morning, a Point Pleasant police officer spotted Maria walking along Route 88 toward home. He was answering a radio call. He saw her and thought, "When I finish this call, I'll loop back and give her a ride." It was the right thing to do. He looped back, but the road was empty. Maria was gone. Her friends waited. Her parents waited. The police were told. And in the way that the system treated young women who disappeared from the Jersey Shore in those years, treating them as runaways, as girls who had chosen to leave, the search for Maria Chialella did not become what it should have become. Her white fur jacket was not on that road. Maria was simply gone, and the world kept moving without her. Spring 1982. Maria Chialella had been missing for 5 months, and on a Wednesday night in April, another girl named Deborah Osborne went out to the Idle Hour Bar in Point Pleasant with a friend on the same Route 88 where Maria was, and sat down and ordered a drink and had no way of knowing any of that. Deborah Osborne grew up on the Jersey Shore. She had a friend she went out with. She had a life that existed before the night of April 8th, 1982. School, family, the particular texture of being young on the shore in the early 80s. The same world Maria and Anna moved through. She disappeared from a bar. She was found in a grave. That is what the record gave her. What the medical examiner would eventually determine about Deborah's death is that she was stabbed 21 times, mostly in the abdomen and chest. Investigators noted that this level of violence was anomalous for Biegenwald. Clean, quick, clinical. The knife, used that many times in that way, indicates a struggle. It indicates resistance. Deborah Osborne fought back, but she lost. 3 girls, 3 families, 3 searches running at the same time on the same shore, and none of them knew about the others. Robert Olesiewicz made the drive from Camden to Asbury Park every Sunday for months. He had Anna's photograph, and he walked the boardwalk showing it to strangers. In the bars, along the strip, outside the Stone Pony, where she had been sitting the last night anyone saw her. He wasn't looking for a killer. He didn't know there was a killer. He was just looking for his sister, the way you look for someone who isn't the type to go off without letting anyone know. In Brick Township, Armando Chiololo waited for a phone call that didn't come. His daughter had borrowed $1 and promised to be home by midnight, and the road where the police officer last saw her walking was empty and had stayed empty, and nobody was treating that emptiness as the emergency it was. These families were not looking for the same thing. They didn't know each other. They had no reason to connect their losses. That connection existed. It was real. It was documented in a file in a New Jersey state office, but nobody told them. Nobody was looking at both searches and asking the question those searches were asking. The shore kept moving. Summer turned to fall, fall to winter, winter to the spring of 1983. And somewhere in Asbury Park, in an apartment on the ground floor of an aging building, a man who had been paroled from prison 8 years earlier was already planning the next one. By the time Anna Olesiewicz disappeared in August 1982, Maria Chiololo had already been missing for 9 months. The Jersey Shore had swallowed 2 teenage girls in less than a year, and the official response had not risen to meet what was happening. Young women who vanished from shore community. Ties in those years were processed by a system that defaulted to a comfortable explanation. Runaway, left voluntarily, chose to disappear, and that explanation required no further action and produced no accountability. On November 20th, 1982, Betsy Bacon, 17 years old, from Seagirt, New Jersey, went out at 11 at night to buy cigarettes. Her family woke up the next morning and she hadn't come back. 1 week before Thanksgiving, another girl from the shore, another night, another disappearance that the system would absorb and file and not urgently pursue. 4 young women now. Maria in November 1981, Deborah in April 1982, Anna in August 1982, Betsy in November 1982. A pattern so clear that the community could feel it even if the official apparatus refused to name it. Parents started walking their daughters to cars. Girls who had always hitchhiked Route 88 without thinking twice stopped hitchhiking. The boardwalk that had always been the place you went to feel alive started emptying out earlier in the evenings. And still, the file sat in the New Jersey State Office. Still, the name on it went unpursued. The man who held that name was living in an apartment in Asbury Park with his wife, and his weapons cache, and his live puff adder snake, and his floor plans of local businesses, and his garage, where at various points he kept things that nobody was supposed to see. On January 4th, 1983, children playing in a wooded lot behind a Burger King on Route 35. In Ocean Township found a body in the leaves, fully clothed, for bullet holes in the head, 5 months in the ground. The description that ran in the newspaper the next day included one detail that a detective named Mike Dowling couldn't stop thinking about. The body had been found barefoot. Anna Olesiewicz had given her shoes to her friend Denise on the boardwalk. The night she disappeared because her feet hurt. Dowling made the connection. Anna was identified, and the thread that investigators pulled on next would unravel everything. Every body, every grave, every girl the system had filed away and forgotten about. Because Anna was not just the third victim. She was the reason that, 18 days later, police would surround an apartment building in Asbury Park and finally put a name to what had been happening on the Jersey Show. His name was Richard Fran Biegenwald. He was 42 years old. He lived in Asbury Park with his wife, Diane, and a man named Darren Fitzgerald who had been in prison with him. He worked odd jobs. He kept a low profile, and the state of New Jersey had known his name since 1958, when he was 18 years old and walked into a grocery store in Bayonne and shot the owner, Stephen Sladowski, 47 years old, an assistant city prosecutor, during a robbery and drove to Maryland before the police caught him. He was convicted of murder, sentenced to life, served 17 years, and was paroled in 1975 on the basis of good behavior. A member of the Paro board, reflecting on the decision years later, estimated that the state had spent more than $250,000 on Biegenwald's care and custody by the time they released him. He violated parole in 1977. The system lost track of him. He was picked up in 1980 on a rape charge that was dismissed when the victim couldn't identify him in a lineup. He served 6 months for the parole violation and was released in February 1981. 8 months later, Maria Chialola borrowed $1 from her father and walked out in a Halloween night. Biegenwald's method was a .22 caliber handgun. He chose it specifically. He told a woman named Teresa Smith, who lived with him and his wife in the summer of 1982, that he preferred the .22 because the bullet would enter the skull and stay inside, bouncing around rather than exiting. He taught Smith how to shoot. He told her she needed to kill someone to prove herself. He chose her co-worker, a woman named Betsy, as Smith's first target. Smith couldn't do it. Biegenwald defined a victim, according to Smith's trial testimony, as a person susceptible to things and easily manipulated. He trolled the Asbury Park boardwalk in his car, according to the same testimony, looking. When prosecutors asked him at trial why he killed Anna Olesiewicz, the answer that came back through the record was 4 words. She was there, so I shot her. That was the motive. That was the full extent of it. Not grievance. Not psychology. Not an ET. The system had failed to treat or address or monitor. Just a man released onto the shore with a .22 and a preference for young women with dark hair, driving the same roads their families would spend months searching. After Anna was identified in January 1983, a woman named Teresa Smith called the police. She had been living with Richard and Diane Biegenwald. She had seen things. She told investigators that Biegenwald had woken her one night and told her to look out the window, and that there was a body in the garage. She told them about the boardwalk trips. She told them about the ring he had taken off the body and given to her, which she had passed on to Diane, and which was now sitting in Diane Biegenwald's jewelry box. On January 22, 1983, police surrounded the apartment building on the pretext of an unrelated arrest nearby. When Biegenwald stepped off, they took him. Inside the apartment, they found pipe bombs, handguns, a machine gun, rohypnol, marijuana, a live puff adder snake, and floor plans of local businesses. Darren Fitzgerald, who had been in the apartment, hid himself in a secret room with several weapons. When detectives found the room and threatened to shoot through the wall, he surrendered. Fitzgerald started talking. He told investigators about the body Biegenwald had shown him in the garage. A young woman, killed, Biegenwald said, for business reasons. He told them he had helped transport the body to Sally Biegenwald's house in Staten Island. He told them that while he was digging the grave, his shovel hit something that was already in the ground. There was already someone there. Fitzgerald led investigators to Staten Island, to Tinton Falls, to Neptune City. Each location gave up another body. Maria Chialola, Deborah Osborne, Betsy Bacon, William Ward, a drug dealer. Biegenwald had shot 5 times in the head and buried near cemetery. 9 victims in total connected to his name. Maria Chialola's mother was called to the police station after her daughter's identification. She walked into a room, and there were 2 tables covered with jewelry that investigators had recovered. She looked at the tables and asked the detective, "How many girls did he kill?" The detective told her they didn't know yet. The trial of Richard Biegenwald for the murder of Anna opened November 14, 1983, in Monmouth County Superior Court. The prosecutor's opening statement framed what had happened with a precision that the families deserved to hear. On the night of August 27, 1982, Richard Biegenwald was on Asbury Park Boardwalk hunting for someone to kill, and Anna was there. Michael Knobloch sat in that courtroom. He was 21 years old, working at a car rental agency, still friends with Gino DeBattista from the Old Camden neighborhood, still carrying the specific weight of a man who gave a girl a ring to cheer her up and never got a reason when she ended things. He believed they would get back together. She was wearing his ring the night she died. He testified about the ring. Then he sat and waited for the verdict. Outside the courtroom, 2 young women from Brick Township sat in the hallway. Maria Kotelnicki and Janine Semeh, both 20 years old, both friends of Maria's. They had driven down for the verdict, not for Biegenwald's trial. Maria's case was separate. They came because Michael and Gino were there, and there was an immediate and miserable bond between the young men from Camden and the young women from Brick, the kind of bond that forms between people who have lost something the same way. Maria Kotelnicki left before the verdict came in. She told Michael it gets better. She didn't stay to hear the jury. The jury foe, N.D. Richard Biegenwald, guilty of the first-degree murder of Anna on December 7, 1983, and recommended the death penalty. The judge formally sentenced him the following day. It was among the earliest death sentences handed down in New Jersey after the state reinstated capital punishment in 1982. Biegenwald was subsequently convicted of William Ward's murder and received a life sentence. In September 1984, he pleaded guilty to the murders of Maria and Deborah. Consecutive life sentences entered to avoid further capital trials. No trial, no testimony, no courtroom where their families could sit and watch the evidence of their daughters' lives be laid out and accounted for in full. Armando, who gave Maria $1 and told her to be home early, received a guilty plea. Deborah Osborne's family received the same. Biegenwald pleaded guilty to Betsy Bacon's murder the following year. The death sentence for Anna's murder was overturned. A second jury sentenced him to death again in 1989. That sentence was overturned again in 1991. Biegenwald remained in New Jersey State Prison for the rest of his life. The death penalty eventually abolished by the state legislature in 2007. He died on March 10, 2008, at St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton of respiratory and kidney failure. He was 67 years old. He died in a hospital bed in 2008. The families have been living with what that system decided long before that day. A member of the parole board who approved Richard Biegenwald's release in 1975 gave a phone interview years after the murders. He was asked about the decision, about what the board had seen in Biegenwald, about what they had concluded, about why they had decided he had earned his way back. His answer was that Biegenwald was neither the Birdman of Alcatraz nor Jack the Ripper. That was the full accounting. That was the considered judgment of the system after 17 years and $250,000 spent on his care and custody. He was paroled. He violated the terms in 1977. The system lost track of him. He was arrested in 1980, released again, returned to prison for 6 months for the parole violation, released again in February 1981. 8 months later, Maria borrowed $1 from her father and walked out into Halloween night. The young women on those roads had no way of knowing the mechanism had failed. They just kept walking home. In the years these girls went missing, Investigators and prosecutors documented what happened when young women disappeared from the shore. Law enforcement almost always concluded they were runaways. They had left voluntarily. That conclusion required no further investigation, produced no accountability, and made it easier for the disappearances to accumulate without triggering the response they deserved. The Asbury Park Press reported in May 1983 that law enforcement believed both Deborah and Maria may have been hitchhiking along Route 88 when they were picked up, and that investigations of crimes against hitchhiking victims were, in the words of one prosecutor, much more difficult because there was no prior connection between victim and perpetrator. That difficulty became a reason not to look harder. It became a file sitting on a desk. It became months of families searching on their own. The prosecutor, who tried Biegenwald, said at a press conference that in his opinion, there was no motive for the killings beyond wanting to see someone die. That statement was accurate. It was also, in a different sense, a description of a system failure, because a man whose entire history pointed toward exactly this outcome had been evaluated, processed, and returned to the roads of Monmouth County, and the young women on those roads had no way of knowing what was coming. After his arrest, Biegenwald offered to lead investigators to more bodies, 25 of them, according to his account, in exchange for a plea deal that would remove the death penalty. The prosecutor refused. His defense attorney later said he believed there were at least 150 people who had fallen victim to Biegenwald over the course of his life. That number was never verified. The families of the confirmed victims had to sit with the possibility that there were others they would never know about. Maria Teresa Chialella was 17 years old. She wanted to study music. She worked at a beach motel that summer because she loved the shore. On Halloween night, she borrowed $1 from her father, pulled on a white fur jacket, and walked out the door, telling him she'd be home by midnight. The last person outside her family to see her alive was a police officer who meant to give her a ride home. He came back 10 minutes later, and the road was empty, and Maria was already gone. Deborah Osborne went to a bar in Point Pleasant on a spring night with a friend. On the night of April 8, 1982, her friend got up to use the restroom, and when she came back, the seat across from her was empty. The medical examiner's report tells you she did not go without a fight. 21 stab wounds. Resistance documented in every one of them. The jukebox at the idle hour kept playing after she was gone. Someone else eventually sat in that seat. Deborah Osborne deserved to be the one sitting in it. Anna Marie Olesiewicz was 18 years old, youngest of 5 children, daughter of a Camden fire captain, heading to college on Monday. She gave her shoes to her friend because her feet hurt, and she sat on the boardwalk listening to music coming through the walls of the Stone Pony, and her friend stepped away for 15 minutes. She was wearing a black and gold ring that her boyfriend had given her on the 8th anniversary of her mother's death, to cheer her up, because she had been down and he wanted to give her something that helped. After the verdict came in, Michael Knobloch walked out of that Monmouth County courthouse 21 years old, not really interested in looking for anybody else. The ring had been evidence. It had done its job. It had connected Anna to the man who killed her, and it had put him in front of a jury, and the jury had done what it was supposed to do. But what the ring meant, what had always meant, what it meant when Michael gave it to her on a hard day, what it meant when she wore it every day after that, what it meant that she was wearing it the night she died, that meaning was never on trial. The lawyers were not interested in it. It belonged to Michael, and it belonged to Anna, and it belonged to whatever the two of them had been to each other, and the verdict didn't touch any of that. Stephen Sladowski, Maria Chialella, Deborah Osborne, Anna Olesiewicz, William Ward, Betsy Bacon. Their names are spoken here because the system that was supposed to protect them failed them, and the coverage that followed their deaths failed them again, and the forgotten deserve to be remembered. If this story stayed with you, if Maria, Deborah, and Anna stayed with you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Shadow Verdict so you don't miss what comes next, and leave a comment with their names, because that's what we do here. The forgotten deserve to be remembered.